Hi, my name is Sven Berkman and I am the Senior Advisor for Anti-Illicit Trade for the Partnership for Safe Medicines, or PSM. It's my pleasure to be with you today and to talk to you about the important issue of counterfeit medicines. We put a great training together for you for today. First, I'm going to talk to you and provide you an overview of what PSM does and give you a global perspective of the issue of counterfeit medicines and discuss the most current developments that we see nationwide. Then I'm going to turn it over to a series of law enforcement and public health experts to review case studies and highlight the impact counterfeit medicines have in your state. All right, let's get into it. PSM is a public health group that's committed to the protection of consumers against counterfeit, substandard, or otherwise unsafe prescription drugs. Our members include pharmacy associations, industry groups, public health, and law enforcement groups. And to further our mission, PSM has partnered with law enforcement experts and associations across the country to educate leaders, policymakers, and communities on the dangers of counterfeit medicines. So, counterfeit medicines pose a significant public health problem. Unlike legitimate drug manufacturers that are subject to FDA oversight and guidelines, labs that manufacture counterfeits have no such oversight. And as you see on these pictures on the screen, often these counterfeit medicines are produced in incredibly unsanitary conditions. And most importantly, these medicines therefore can harm patients and the members of your community. In a best case scenario, counterfeit medicines do not contain any active ingredients and are just harmless sugar pills or saline solution. However, often counterfeit drugs can contain the wrong concentration or wrong dose of the active ingredient, or even completely different active ingredients. And most concerning, counterfeits can also contain very harmful ingredients, including bacteria-laced water, fluor wax. We have even seen powdered cement or antifreeze. The illegal manufacturing, trafficking, and sale of counterfeit medicines and medical supplies is often an underestimated crime. But it is a crime worth hundreds of billions of dollars for criminals across the globe. The United States does have one of the safest and most secure prescription drug supply chains in the world. However, that does not prevent criminals from seeking opportunities to infiltrate that system and traffic dangerous medicines to the American people. In fact, counterfeit medicines have been found in all 50 states and for most therapeutic areas, including for high blood pressure, lifestyle, and even cancer drugs. There are really three main threats of counterfeit medicines for the United States. First, the online and wholesale distribution and sale of counterfeit prescription medicines themselves. The second is the substantial threat of counterfeit pills made with controlled substances. And lastly, pill press operations producing counterfeit pills locally within the US. Let's go to the first one. The online sales of counterfeit medicines is the most common and the one many are probably most familiar with. Criminals set up websites to look like legitimate online pharmacies, often Canadian pharmacies, and then sell counterfeit or substandard drugs to unsuspecting customers and deliver them via postal or express shipments. Operation Pangea, which is an annual operation coordinated by Interpol, which this year involved police, customs, and health regulatory authorities from 92 countries, shows really the scale of these operations. During the 7-day Operation Pangea, during May of 2021, law enforcement took down 113,000 web links, websites, and online marketplaces, seized potentially dangerous pharmaceuticals worth more than $23 million, and it resulted in the arrest of 277 individuals. In the US, regular significant seizures of counterfeit prescription drugs at our ports of entry do highlight that criminal operations are working day in and day out. to traffic counterfeit medicines into and across the United States. The scale of these enforcement efforts is jarring. CBP officers at JFK's International Mail Facility screen 1 million packages per day for illegal items, including counterfeit medicines. Another scheme criminals use is to transship counterfeit medicines in wholesale quantities through various countries to disguise their origins. Criminals will ship drugs in wholesale quantities to doctors' offices or pharmacies who fell for the scheme and bought from an unknown supplier in the hope of getting a deal. In one very prolific incident, a company called CanadaDrugs.com shipped almost $80 million of counterfeit drugs into the United States. These drugs often originated in Asia or the Middle East and were then transshipped through free trade zones in multiple countries, including Canada, to make them appear legitimate. One of the counterfeit drugs they trafficked was Avastin. Avastin is a cancer drug that shrinks tumors. This actually is another tragic impact that counterfeit medicines have. Most don't have any or correct amount of ingredients, so the patients, in this case, that received Avastin, received medicines that did not have any active ingredients, and so they did not get the treatment to shrink their tumors and beat their cancer. But in the case of Avastin, this scheme went on for years and was only discovered because one of the counterfeit drugs had been produced in such poor conditions that it actually had grown mold inside the vial. When the counterfeit medicine was applied to a patient in a doctor's office, the mold created an allergic reaction in the patient, alerting the nurse who administered the drug, who alerted the doctor, and who ultimately alerted the FDA, who investigated the case and identified CanadaDrugs.com as the perpetrator. Yet, besides the grand scale of that crime, and besides a multi-year investigation and prosecution by the DOJ and several U.S. attorneys, the criminals did not get any jail time because they're foreigners. And that really is one of the big issues within counterfeit medicines, is that if these crimes are committed by foreigners outside the United States, they're really hard to prosecute. So in this case, they were Canadian pharmacists, and U.S. law enforcement powers often end at the border. Canada did not agree to extradite them, and so they got away ultimately with a monetary fine of $34 million, which is notably less than $80 million, which they made, and they got some house arrest. Again, this case highlights the significant roadblocks to bring foreign criminals to justice who traffic in counterfeit medicines. But they're also very good examples how international criminals were brought to justice. But they do highlight the extent to which law enforcement had to go through to get there. Healthy Nation was a criminal enterprise run by a pair of Ukrainian nationals. They were trafficking various counterfeit prescription drugs used to treat cancer and Hep C into the United States. Initially, the Ukrainians remained in the Ukraine and out of the reach of U.S. law enforcement. But federal undercover agents started to pose as U.S. wholesalers for prescription drugs. They started buying increasing quantities of the pair and finally convinced the two Ukrainian leaders to come to the United States and meet them in Houston to set up an even bigger deal, or so they thought. The pair was arrested and charged, pled guilty, and is currently awaiting sentencing while in custody behind bars in the United States. But these attempts of criminals never stop. Right now, there's a concerning incident of counterfeit HIV drugs in the United States. Most concerning about this current case is that these counterfeit medicines, which were made with incorrect tablets, were found in U.S. pharmacies and were packaged in genuine packaging. It will be interesting to find out how the criminals got their hands on genuine packaging and how they were able to infiltrate the U.S. supply chain. This case highlights why it's so important to maintain the integrity and security of the United States supply chain and keep it closed from unknown suppliers. We'll gladly keep you updated on the developments in this case. Finally, the COVID-19 pandemic has shown us that criminals do not like to let a good crisis go to waste. We've seen record amounts of fraudulent test kits, fake medicines, fake vaccination cards, counterfeit N95 masks, and even counterfeit vaccines. Over 50% of Operation Pangaea seizures this year alone were COVID-19 related. That concludes my remarks for now. Counterfeit medicines are a significant threat to public health and safety, and something that we wanted to make sure you are fully briefed on. I will now hand it over to our law enforcement experts to update you on the latest developments in counterfeit medicines in your state.
Hello, it is my pleasure to be here with you in Missouri today. My name is Rich Stanek, and I serve as a law enforcement consultant to the Partnership for Safe Medicines. I'm a career law enforcement officer and public servant. I formerly served as a Minneapolis police officer, a state legislator, the Commissioner of Public Safety and Director of Homeland Security for the state of Minnesota. And most recently, I proudly served as the Sheriff of Hennepin County, Minnesota. Currently, along with consulting for PSM, I operate my own public safety strategies consulting firm. Today, I'd like to talk with you all about counterfeit medicines have started to penetrate the state of Missouri and the devastating impact they have on your communities. We will especially discuss the deadly wave of counterfeit medicines made with fentanyl that have started to overrun our country and have made a significant impact here in the state of Missouri. Incidences of counterfeit prescription drugs were a persistent yet minor issue for law enforcement before the advent of counterfeit pills made with fentanyl. And while at least 40 individuals, doctors' offices, and medical practices have been implicated in various black market and counterfeit prescription drug schemes from 2010 to about 2015, most of these cases were smaller criminal matters. But that does not mean that Missouri has been immune from this crime. The FDA has identified doctors and medical officers here in Missouri as participants in all significant national counterfeit prescription drug cases of that era: Gallant Pharmaceuticals, Medical Device King, and of course CanadaDrugs.com. The most recent criminal case highlight that Missouri continues to be an attractive and lucrative market for criminals selling counterfeits. Starting in 2016, counterfeit lifestyle drugs have become an increasing criminal enterprise in Missouri, including large-scale seizures and criminal convictions. But now Missouri is facing the significant threat of counterfeit medicines made with fentanyl and meth. These pills often resemble counterfeit opioid pills such as Percocets and Oxys, but also Xanax and Adderall. Oxy M30s are by far the most common. One might ask, well, why fentanyl? And the answer is quite simple. It all comes down to the money. Fentanyl-laced pills are extremely profitable for criminals. A kilo of fentanyl, including shipping costs, will sell for about $10,000 on the dark web. And 1 kilo is equal to 1 million milligrams. It takes about 1 milligram of fentanyl to make a single fentanyl pill, so 1 million milligrams can make about 1 million pills or doses. And on the streets, these pills typically sell between $10 and $20 per pill. So a criminal or criminal enterprise in the business of making, trafficking, and selling fentanyl pills is poised to make $10 to $20 million from a $10,000 investment. This level of profit is simply irresistible to criminals, and it has attracted the Mexican cartels who have perfected and industrialized the production, trafficking, and sale of these pills. The DEA, in their 2020 National Drug Threat Assessment Report, details how the rapid growth and proliferation are the direct result of cartel involvement. The cartels have established industrial-sized laboratories in Mexico to produce these pills en masse. They buy fentanyl and fentanyl precursor chemicals from China and then produce millions of pills which are nearly indistinguishable from real pills without proper testing. And as a result, counterfeit pills made with fentanyl have been found and have caused deaths in all 50 states, including the great state of Missouri. The DEA has stated that these counterfeit pills are a significant contributor to the rates of drug overdoses across the United States. With the release of overdose data by the CDC earlier this year, these dire predictions and our worst fears have been materialized. When the CDC reported over 93,000 overdoses across the nation, primarily driven by fentanyl and synthetic opioids. Counterfeit pills made with fentanyl enter the country now in record numbers. Seizures of 10,000 pills used to be a rare occurrence, but now have become the low point. Pills seized in a single seizure now are often in the tens of thousands. The majority of these pills are seized at the southern border or smuggled into the United States by the Mexican cartels. And from there, these pills get smuggled all across the country, including the Pacific Northwest. But counterfeit pills made with fentanyl also penetrate the United States border from the north. Most recently, the Ontario Provincial Police, or OPP, took out a large pill press operation outside of Toronto during Operation Javelin. The criminal network OPP dismantled was producing hundreds of thousands of pills for distribution in Canada and the US. As a result of this influx and drastic increase of counterfeit pills, the DEA in late September issued their first public safety alert in over 6 years. In the first 9 months of the year, the DEA had seized over 9.5 million counterfeit pills, more than the last 2 years combined. And even more concerning, the DEA lab analysis showed that 40%, or 2 out of every 5 pills, have a potentially lethal dose of 2 milligrams of fentanyl or more. Let's talk about cases of counterfeit pills made with fentanyl that we've seen here in Missouri. Cases involving fentanyl pills became increasingly common starting in 2016, while initial reports cited only limited quantities. But by 2019, law enforcement across the state and the DEA were noticing and warning about increasing amounts of counterfeit oxys and Xanax in the state. Missouri responded by aggressively prosecuting the individuals responsible for manufacturing, distributing, and selling these dangerous pills. Several charged individuals have received significant prison sentences of 12 to 15 years, providing an important deterrent. However, now, unfortunately, fentanyl pills in the state have shown explosive growth with regular, significant seizures, resulting in warnings from the DEA and law enforcement across the state about the prevalence and dangers of counterfeit pills made with fentanyl. As part of the DEA's National Public Safety Alert, the DEA St. Louis Division reported that it had seized 179 kilograms of fentanyl pills in the region, which equates to over 1.3 million pills just in the first 9 months of 2021. This was more than the previous 2 years combined. The increasing prevalence of these counterfeit pills made with fentanyl and the increase in overdose deaths provide an imminent threat to Missouri and the communities you protect. I want to alert you to an additional threat we're seeing. As you're likely aware, there has been a reoccurrence of methamphetamine nationwide. And driven by this, law enforcement has started to seize meth in pill form in several states. These pills come in the form of MDMA, or more concerning, mimic the prescription drug Adderall and contain methamphetamine. This trend is accelerating quickly. Reports of these counterfeit Adderall meth pills have increased from reports in just 8 states last year to reports in 17 states in 2021. This is likely yet another attempt by the cartels to recruit yet another new generation of drug users. And finally, law enforcement has started to report additional novel forms of counterfeit pills made with fentanyl. The seizures included pills that mimic Aleve, metformin, and even baby aspirin. While not widespread yet, this is a very troublesome development. And many of these novel counterfeit pill forms and pills made with meth are likely driven by domestic pill press operations. And we have seen several pill press seizures and prosecutions involving pill presses in the state of Missouri. Pill presses, or pill press parts, are readily available on the internet and are virtually unregulated. It is relatively inexpensive to purchase the parts for your everyday counterfeiter, requiring just a few $1,000s. Moreover, it is criminally low risk. The possession of a pill press by itself is at most a violation of the DEA's registration requirement, which carries no jail time nor any real fines. These pill presses do not just produce fentanyl pills, they can make any pills. To help increase awareness and education of this pill press threat, PSM has released 2 reports on the issue of pill presses, and you can access those reports on PSM's website. These pills are increasingly available on social media, directly targeting our youth. Education of the public on this issue is increasingly important. The DEA has released a campaign, One Pill Can Kill, available at the dea.gov/onepill. PSM has also several educational resources that we encourage you to share with your communities. These toolkits are a great way for parents to start this uncomfortable but important discussion with their teenagers. And I want to thank you for your time and thank you for all you do. Please know that the Partnership for Safe Medicines and myself are always here to assist you. Stay safe out there.
Hi. I want to spend a moment to discuss why counterfeit drugs are becoming an increasingly important issue for law enforcement. As you have seen, criminal counterfeiting drug operations continue to grow in complexity, scale, and sophistication. They continue to penetrate every corner of society, and they pose a public health and safety threat. But these counterfeit drugs are not the only crime these criminal organizations are involved in. They are also engaged in drug trafficking, gun trafficking, money laundering, and with the increasing profit potential, counterfeit drugs have started to have the attention of gangs, cartels, and transnational criminal organizations. This will likely result in the further increase of other violent crimes, unfortunately. But most importantly, counterfeit medicines are a law enforcement issue since they harm your communities. It is your deputies and your officers that respond to the 911 calls when individuals are harmed and have adverse or even deadly reaction to counterfeit medicines. And as mentioned, the drastic increase we have seen in overdose death is in direct correlation to the increase in counterfeit medicines with controlled substances.
I wanted to spend a few minutes to discuss how to apply all of this in your day-to-day duties. Counterfeit medicine smuggling and trafficking operations very often resemble the structure of narco-trafficking outfits. They will have runners, stash houses, separate money handlers, and will try to move product in bulk. Here's what your officers and deputies should be on the lookout for. Any bulk or unusual packaging for prescription drugs is a telltale sign. Legitimate prescription medications are not sold in baggies. They're not sold in bulk or loose packaging. Bulk packaging, bottles with 100 or thousands of pills outside of any pharmacy or commercial wholesale business is a clear sign of a potential smuggling operation. And be on the lookout for foreign markings or foreign packaging. While we often think that counterfeiters are matching packaging perfectly, quite often they're rather sloppy, careless, or even lazy. This is an example of the counterfeit drug Avastin, which we discussed earlier in this session. The counterfeit is replicated to foreign packaging for the U.S. market, a clear red flag. Other signs of counterfeit are pills that seem to have impurities, speckles, or dirt in them. Packaging that is damaged, contains typos, or looks cheap. Again, the counterfeiters are trying to make a quick buck. Sometimes we've seen counterfeit packaging that was literally made on a photocopier or a laser printer. And lastly, the FDA and the actual manufacturers are great resources of product packaging and authentication knowledge. They can help you access, track, and trace data if applicable, or help you authenticate the product itself. I want to close today with giving you a few thoughts on how to handle a drug overdose scene. Much of what I would be telling you, you're probably already doing, but just a great reminder. As you saw with the story of our family advocate, these fentanyl pills provide a new challenge for law enforcement to ensure that these cases are properly prosecuted. And while an overdose scene might initially just look like an overdose, prosecutors in the U.S. have started to look at them as homicide or manslaughter. And we in law enforcement provide an important role to ensure that these criminals who manufacture, traffic, and sell these poison pills are brought to justice. So here are a few thoughts. Treat opioid drug overdoses as crime scenes. That means to secure the scene as soon as possible to preserve evidence. Often the fire department or EMS might have arrived at the scene first, or during any rescue attempts have started to contaminate the scene. Securing the scene quickly to ensure evidence can be protected is critical. Secure as much evidence as possible to support investigations and prosecutions. My simple advice, treat it like a drug scene as you would any other drug scene. Secure cell phones, computers, all pill packaging, shipment packages. This will help investigate up the chain, back to the source, and provide crucial evidence to the prosecutors and your investigators. As part of your evidence collection, be sure to follow proper chain of evidence procedures so all evidence can be used and admitted at trial. And on another note, because fentanyl is so dangerous and exposure can result in health issues for your deputies and officers, treat all pills and substances as unknown substances. So, if you come upon a baggie of pills, treat it like it's fentanyl with proper procedures, PPE, and testing. Finally, if your office or department doesn't already, it is our strong suggestion that all data from these overdose scenes get entered into OD Map to help identify dangerous batches of pills circulating in your communities. Thank you for your time and thank you for all you do. Please know that the Partnership for Safe Medicines, their time, and I myself are always here to assist you. Stay safe.
Thank you for your time today and your attention to this important issue. Our role at PSM is to educate, train, and to advocate. We have a wide range of training and educational materials available for you. So check out our website or contact me directly and let me know how we can help you make sure your officers are trained and your citizens are informed and aware. Again, thank you for your time and thank you for all you do. Please know that the Partnership for Safe Medicines and I myself are always here to assist you. Be safe out there.